in the appropriate audiences. Now, it could be that we're wanting to find people that are reaching a high lead score, for example. So what I would do is I'd drag on my start audience and I would use the lead score as the trigger and say anybody whose lead score is greater than 40, for example, and all I will do is create an action, add that user to a marketing list, which is, let's say, high lead scorers. Now, I'm going to go through all of these components, so don't worry, and explain what I'm doing here, but I'm just demonstrating the difference. Okay. So this is a really basic job now, which will be putting people in this audience, which is available in this Your Data section. I saw it because it was already a list I had. It was called High Lead Scorers, wasn't it, or something like that? Yeah, there we go. So it'd be putting people into this segment. Now, there are lots of people that use these in different ways. So, for example, what we've had a lot of conversations with people about is how to streamline the data upload process. So, for example, if I want to upload a single file into the system, if I'm not using a connection or a connector or a CRM integration, and I want to upload a file using the data upload process, what I do is I'll have these journeys like this set up behind the scenes so that when I upload the file, the system will pick through the contacts that have been added and put them in the appropriate segments without me having to do anything. So let's just have a quick look at that process really quickly. So let's start at the data upload process and let's drag in a file. So I'm using this data upload, and this is a batch of data. I think there's about 40,000 records on here from a data partner called Ladero. Give the system a second. Okay. Now, because this is already a data file that I've used before, I've already mapped these fields. So this is the fields in my Excel spreadsheet, and this is the fields that are in my in the Force 24 system. So because I've already used this before, I can find the data map that I've already used, and the system will remember all of the mapped fields and where I've put them. Now then, let's imagine I want to take one of these values. Let me see. Industry. Right, so industry, for example, what I'm guessing in this data set is that industry is basically the vertical sector that the contacts belong to. So let's imagine that when I upload my data, I want it to put people in the correct industry segments. Oh, there's Kelsey joining now. A little bit late to the party this morning, Kelsey. Better late than never. Okay. So let's imagine I want to put people in the vertical segments that are as listed in the industry field here. So what I'd do is I'd go ahead and I'd click upload, and that would then create the data upload and create a job just like this with an import key. Now, from the journey manager's point of view, it doesn't care about any of that. All it cares about is the starting condition that we have in here. So, for example, how would we do this now? So I would use the created on relative date. Created on relative date is today. And what that'll do is it'll look for everybody that's been created today. And then it will say, right, what am I going to do with that? Right, okay. And this is where we start to look at the various different components within the journey builder. So let's break this down. Let me delete these off and I'll start with a blank canvas. Okay, so let's break these down. We have the start audience, and the start audience, remember, this is the entry into any journey. So this is the starting blocks to get started with any journey. So what is our starting condition? Now in this instance, because it's a data upload, it's going to be people that have been created today, perhaps. Or it may be anybody, if we really wanted to tie it to that particular import key. So go back to that data upload. So this import key is available for me in the journey builder. So if I only want the 140 records in this particular instance to run through this journey, I could tie it to the import key. So I'd use import key equals that. Make sure you get rid of the space off the end. And we should still have about 145 people there. Perfect. So then by tying the import key, only those 145 people ever will go through this journey. But like I said before, the way, if I'm using a data upload, I want this to be an always on facility. So usually I use the created on date. Created on relative is today. So any new people created today. There may be other conditions or rules that I wish to add. And this is quite an interesting topic now, because this interface is in some regards quite complicated, but in other regards really logical and really simple. So let me just break this interface down for you a little bit. So the first thing that we've got here is this saved queries. So if you're ever having a problem and you don't know how to find somebody or don't understand the best way to do something, just a second, I've just noticed this comment. Is that how, Kelsey, is that how you use the marketing list? The easiest way. Is that how you select a marketing list to use? It's easy. Yes, so, okay, Kelsey, just on that point, the way it depends. If I'm wishing to start from a marketing list in my journey, yes, I would use the marketing list equals, and then the name of the marketing list that I want to trigger the contacts from. So, but this context that we're talking about right now is if I am wanting to upload some data into the system and I want it to run through various different processes to put them in the correct segments. So what I'm doing is just breaking it down a little bit and looking at the start audience component. And what I'm looking at first of all is the fact that I've got saved queries. So in the past I may have looked for particular queries and I've saved them. So let me just select this one. And I can set selected, and this is just an example of a query that I've done before. I can look for, let me find one, Northern Contacts Finder, I just saw that then, Northern Contacts Finder, set selected, there you go. That's how I find my Northern contacts. And I save these either by asking my account manager to build them and they'll save them for you, or I save them from within the contact search function, which is this icon here. So let's just go back to this. What we have is the concept of nots, ands, and ors, and we have rules and groups. So let me refresh this. I want to get back to a simple position. Cancel that. Back into here. I want to get to a simple position. So let's take these rules first. Rules and groups. So a rule is one of these that occurs in the box. So I add a rule, and it adds another option here. Now let me take somebody. So I want anybody campaign. Any created on relative is today. So that means anybody created today, I want to be included. But let's say you must have visited a particular page on our website. And I can use this contains option pricing, for example. So I'm looking for anybody that's been to the pricing page on our website and their record was created for today. So these are rules. I can duplicate a rule if I'm wanting to look for multiple pages, whatever it needs to be. So I add more rules and it will narrow down the type of people that I want to find. Okay? Get rid of that rule. Now, we have the concept of a group. Now let me add a group. And what the group does is it adds a new not and or operator on here. So let's just talk about what groups do. So when I add a group, you see this line here. Okay, this line helps me understand as to how the conditions are working together with these not, and ors. So I'm in this and condition at the moment, and this is going to get a bit of a bit tricky to understand for a moment. So I'll try and make it as easy as possible. But when I've got an and condition, it's basically saying the user that I want to find must have been created today, and they must have contained this particular page on our website, and they must have visited this page on our website. So what the AND condition does is it binds all the conditions that you've set together to narrow down the audience. Okay, now let's conversely look at the OR condition. The OR condition is the opposite. So what we're saying now is the user must have been created today, or their activities must contain pricing, or they must have contained this, but they must have visited this page, which looked at this page as well. Now, what that does is it expands the net. So, and shrinks the net or expands the net. It's quite a difficult one, but it's basically plus and minus in the SQL world, if you like. Now, the next thing is the not negation. Now, not is an interesting one, because let's imagine if I wanted to use doesn't contain. Right. This is going to sound crazy now, but trust me, it's the way it works. So if I wanted to say, but they cannot have visited that page, one of the things that I can do is use that doesn't contain. It's fine. But if I flip the not condition on, what it does is it says created on today is not today. They have not been to this pricing page and they have not looked at that. Now that just means that I've got to, it means it's easier for me. So some of the conditions like this, I can say is not, which is the same as doing that. But I can't say is not today. So that is not sort of puts a whole, it doesn't conform to any of this stuff. And it makes it easier for me rather than having to go through each of the conditions and saying it's a not. So I hope that makes sense. It makes very little sense to me, but essentially when you start to think about what you're doing and break it down into little jobs, so you can start to figure out how to use it. So the most common use case is this and or. I'm looking for people created today and they must have visited our webpage and they must have visited this page. Now, there are then instances where I need to say, but they must have been created today, but they must have a lead score of between X and Y or A and B. So this is now where we set a different group, and we can now change this operator to be group. Let's have a look to or. So let me just demonstrate that point. So between 1 and 5, duplicate that, and 20 and 30. Random. So now what I've done is I've kept this condition the same. So I'm looking for people that are created today and have visited the pricing page on our website. I'm going to delete that because it's making it hard for me to explain. So I'm looking for people that have been created today and have visited the pricing page on our website, and they must have either a lead score between 1 and 5 or a lead score between 20 and 30. So this or operator here is now looking at either or. So the group has allowed me to say, okay, it must be looking at these, and you must also have done that or that. So let's, before we all lose the will to live, move on from the start audience conditions. Now the point is, remember, you've got the free training and support for life. Ask the question. If you're not sure, just ask the question and we'll try and talk you through it. It's a really difficult thing to get your head around, but think of it like maths, plus and minuses, brackets, etc. Then that's sort of about along the lines of it. So, okay, next thing, I've got a start audience. Now, what I've said is about this journey is we want to try to make it about being best practice journeys. And some of you I've already discussed this aspect with, but before I ever do anything like send an email, what I always do is I always have what I would class as a control delay in there. So what is a control delay? So let me move that out of the way for a second. This is a delay. Okay, oops, get rid of that. So a delay object is a really exciting one for me because this is one of the things that helps me regulate my journeys. So I'm often not actually delaying for a period of time. So I often am taking the tick out of that, although I will consider that in just a moment. I'll start from the bottom up. What I'm doing is I'm starting by just controlling how the data flows. So let's imagine that I only work Monday to Friday, so do my sales team. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that emails are only being distributed at the time in which my sales team are in the office. So I'm going to set this send window to be Monday to Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. and say 4 p.m. 5 p.m., 4 p.m. There you go. Okay. I can add more intervals as well. So if I say, yeah, but then there's a night shift comes on at 7 p.m. till 9 p.m., whatever. But I'll take that off. So that's what this delay object does. It allows me to regulate it. The other thing it allows me to do is throttle. So in instances where we're talking to large data segments, anything greater than 10,000 records, and actually what we want to do is control the delivery of these emails, we'll set a max volume per hour of contacts, and let me say that's 1,000. Okay, now I'll explain what that does. So what that's going to do, let's just save that, and I would connect that up to here into here. So in this instance, we found a group of contacts. We've now going to delay, and this is going to then just regulate. It's not actually going to delay, it's just going to regulate, and then it's going to send an email. But what's important to me is that the emails only go out Monday to Friday between 8 and 4 p.m. And from a deliverability perspective, I want to deliver a maximum of 1,000 contacts per hour into this stage. So any more than, say, 10,000, more leaning towards 20, 30,000 contacts in a journey, you find that you may run into problems whereby your sales team can't cope with the number of leads, and the appropriate thing to do is slow it down, and it means that you've got a steady, consistent flow of leads into the business. The other thing is we can set this not before. So obviously what a not before does is enables me to specify a time and date. So if you think about the old-fashioned way of sending email, what you'd do is you'd build an email and you'd say, right, here's my subject line, here's my audience, and I want it to send at 9 p.m. on Friday, the 12th of October. So in which case what you'd do is you'd select the date and you'd select the time, and that would hold all the contacts back until that time. So that's the same as basic scheduling. So that's a different kind of delay option. The next thing is delay for. And this is what most people sort of think about when they think about delay object. And a delay for is where we simply say, right, I wish to delay for 1 day, 6 hours, 5 hours, and 1 minute. So what that's going to do, obviously, is if we take this whole situation now, it's going to delay for 1 day, 5 hours, 1 minute, and then it's going to check, is it after the 12th of the 10th at 9 p.m.? And then it's going to check, is it Monday to Friday between the hours of 8 and 4? And I'm going to send 1,000 an hour. So if I was to hit save now, the next available date for any emails to go out would be Monday morning at 8 a.m. because that's after that date and after that delay. I can add other windows as well. So if I know my sales team are in a Saturday and I wanted to send only for a few hours on a Saturday, I can do that. So these are imperative. So whenever you are building a journey with an email stage, an SMS stage, always make sure you have this delay object set before you send it that is just going to regulate when the emails can be sent. Otherwise, you potentially run the risk of somebody uploading some data at a crazy hour of the day or night and triggering a start audience which would then be sent at an inappropriate time. Okay, so that's start audiences, that's delays. We're going to move on to emails. So the email object itself is a really easy one to understand. We have our email templates that we've got here. Remember, we must have published the email template in order for it to be visible in here. And this is stored in published most recent order. But if I know the name of my template, paid search, it will allow me to find it here. I just select that template and it will display in here as being the email template that I've selected. I supply a subject line and I can supply a from name. So the subject line is an easy one. Everybody understands what a subject line is. I supply a from name. So which is the from name? The from name is the name that is displayed in Outlook or the iPhone or whatever client it is that you're using as being who it's from. So I could put the company name, Force 24. I could put Adam Oldfield, whichever I want. The next component is the override reply address. And now by default, that will be the one that is set in your account as being the primary address. So if anybody hits reply, it will come through to that address. So let's understand how that works. When I hit reply, what actually happens is it doesn't go automatically to there. It replies into our platform. It records it and checks the words. It reads the words in the email and says, right, that's not an unsubscribe or an out of office, in which case I'll forward it on to the reply email address. So some people have had issues with this because the replies are picking up words like I do not wish to, or I am out of the office, or whatever. So if you are using that kind of language, what you can do is you can elect to turn on all replies in your account. So any email sent to that email address will get automatically forwarded on to the correct destination, irrespective of whether it's a bounce or not. But that way it helps you make sure that you're not missing any potential legitimate emails. So if you're not sure and you are relying on people replying to their emails, talk to your account manager and they can turn that function on for you. Okay, next thing is the send server. Now, most people are using 1 or 2 send servers, but if I'm sending on behalf of many different brands, I'd be able to select which brand I'm sending on behalf of at this point. But mostly we leave that to the default that will be selected when we open the object. The next thing is, what type of communication is this? Is it a marketing or a transactional? Now, we must be very clear in this. Marketing emails are emails that contain any aspect of marketing. So, for example, if I am sending you a transactional email that says your dishwasher will be delivered this morning, but on that same email have used advertising and used marketing banners, that now becomes a marketing email. So you must use the marketing flag. Now the difference being, if I select the marketing flag here, the system will adhere to the unsubscribe and subscription policies that you've set or the user has set. If I select transactional, the system will ignore user preferences and send the email. So this is very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So if my email is your dishwasher will be delivered tomorrow morning, and that's it, and we can put delivery details and we can put whatever we want on there, but the point is we can't use marketing. So if that's the case, it needs to unsubscribe marketing subscription preferences, because I don't need to adhere to a subscription preferences for transactional email, and it will allow you to send the email to that user. The next thing is subscription preferences. So last week, not last week, the week before, we discussed how to build subscription preferences in your account, and we will cycle back round onto that topic probably at some point in November, just for anybody that's missed it. Or of course ask your account manager and they can talk you through it right now. But the subscription preferences are, when I come to unsubscribe from an email and I don't want to remove myself from everything, I can just say, well, I just don't send me automation guides, or don't send me whatever it may be. So I can select the type of content that this email relates to, and I can select that subscription preference. Okay. Now, I should rename all of my stages so that I can find it later. Whoa. Sorry, guys.
We're back.
Still there?
I think we're back.
We're back. Maybe that's what's happening there.
I can still see everything.
You recording?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start it again. Apologise, guys. I'm not quite sure. We had a bit of a technical issue there. I will make sure that we get a new screen recording. Okay, we're back in business. Sorry about that. So I should rename everything that I do. That way I can find it later on. Send email to friend. I don't know why I'd call it that, but I did. So it's called that. Okay, click save. So the next thing is that I'd like to do is, you know what, actually that's a real simple journey and I'm done. I just want to end the journey there. That's fine, I can do that. And I drag on the end journey component, connect it up, and all of a sudden the validation errors disappear and this becomes a valid journey. So that's nice and easy for me, but do you know what? That's not what it's about. It's not about being easy, it's about getting what's best. So let's do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have what we call a make decision object, and I'm going to drag this make decision object onto the canvas. So what the make decision object does is it allows me to make a decision about the user's status after the email has been sent. So for example, I'm asking you to download a case study. How do I know whether you did it or not? How do I know whether you downloaded that case study or not? And the point is, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to actually make sure that people are being retargeted where they need to be retargeted. So here's how we do that. We'll set the delay, in this instance as being instant. So I have two types of delays, an instant or a delayed decision. So the make decision, instant decision, means that the moment the contact reaches this stage, it will make the decision. Whereas a delayed decision will say, okay, well, I'll give the user up to 3 days, 1 hour and 0 minutes to actually meet the criteria that's specified. So let's do that. Let's pretend that we're looking for anybody that's visited the thanks page of our website. Contains, there we go. So I've got my same saved queries here. So this is the exact same interface here that is available in the trigger and the contact search function. So let's just quickly explain the difference, because a lot of people get confused with this delayed. So what a delayed decision does is it delays, it works more as a timeout. And now there's a difference between a timeout and a delay. So a delay, if you were to delay everybody, the decision would be made on everybody after 3 days, 1 hour. But what if I do this straight away? What if, for example, I visit that page straight away and I want to push you to another email that says, thanks for downloading our guide. So in which case, I don't want to be waiting 3 days for that. So this delayed decision here is a delay timeout on the no. So let me just save that and I'll explain it. So here we go. So let's say I meet that criteria right now, I will immediately go on the yes branch. But because no, I'm looking for somebody that's not done something, there's nothing for me to look for. So I need to have a timeout that says, okay, if after 3 days he's still not done it, then send him to the no branch. So that's an easier way to do it. So again, what I do normally is I would use the delay object, delay for the amount of days that I actually want to delay it. Oops, wrong one. And connect that up instead. So this is very different to using the delay within the decision itself. So this delay will hold everybody back for 3 days and adhere to the send window and only push them through into that decision when the object conditions are met. So I would then use that and turn that to the instant, which means that everybody will be held back for that amount of time before they go on to the next stage. Okay, some marketeers then wish to do some split testing, in which case the split object is used, and we'll send 50% that way, 25% that way, and 25% that way, let's say. So this is percentages. And let me just push this yes branch into here. This now allows me to branch off into 3 different directions. So I may wish to test some creative. I may wish to see whether I should be sending an email with this particular message on it or an email with that particular message. It's entirely up to me. Or I may test email. Select anything for a second. Email that direction. I want to send some an SMS. Will SMS work for this audience? Let's try it. I'll drag that on there. Apologise, keep missing the mark. By the way, if that ever happens, it's usually down to the fact that the target is just missing where it needs to go. That'll do. There we go. So I'm going to send an SMS. Where'd it go? Allow Liv to join. Thank you, Liv. Here we go. And then I may wish this other last 25% not to do anything. So what's happened here is, rather than making a decision on anybody to split the audience, I've randomly selected 50% of the audience to receive an email, 25% of the audience to receive an SMS, and 25 as my control group, let's say, that receives nothing. So I'm able to test not just subject lines. I mean, big bugbear of mine is, MailChimp used to say that split testing was just subject lines. It isn't. Split testing is pretty much any attribute within the campaign at all. Not just within the email, it's actually what mechanism do I want to use? Do I even want to use email? Do I want to use SMS? Or do I even need a stage at this point? So split testing is a little bit more important than that. Okay, now when split testing, what we may wish to do is we may wish to say, right, okay, well, 50% have gone that way, 25% have gone that way, and 25% gone that way. How do I know which is which? Well, what we can do then is we can use this action function. And this action function is where it gets interesting, because this is what I use to put people in or take people out of specific segments. And remember, reporting, segment evolution reporting is pivotal. So this is really important to me. So let's do this. I'm going to put people that have gone through that 50% split into a segment and call it 50. Segment 50. Save. So once you've been through that, I'm going to add you to segment 50. Once you've been through the SMS, I'm going to put you into segment 25. 25 SMS. Now the thing is, I'm building those segments because they don't exist. So rather than having to go and create a segment and then add them to it, I can build the segment just by dropping the action on. So let me just show you that right now. I'll go to the Your Data page. On the Your Data page, I have those segments now created. Nice and easy. So now I've built those segments. Once the user's been through there, it will put that in that segment, so it'll alert me to the fact that these users have been through that segment. Now, since I can't have, there's no point putting anything on the end after an end journey component, I have to put that before the end journey component, add to, and it's segment 25 end. So now I'll know, not only will I have the campaign reporting, I'll have the segment reporting telling me how well that these segments, each branch has done. So, in terms of what that physically is, this is actually some pretty advanced level marketing that's taken me about 5 minutes to do. All right, a bit more than that, I'd say 25 minutes, but actually I've done that quite slowly because I've been talking to you guys. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for a criteria, I'm delaying and I'm controlling the flow of the contacts through, and I'm sending an email. Remember, because that start audience is constantly running, it's checking the system every 5 seconds for people that meet that criteria. So every 5 seconds, new people may come through. So this is like little pulses of electricity running through here as people meet the criteria. So this delay object, remember, resets it and makes sure that I'm not being sent campaigns outside of appropriate business hours. I'm then making a decision. Did you do what I asked you to do? If the answer was yes, I'm going to send you into this split object. And the split object is going to take 50% of the traffic that way, 25 that way, 25 that way. Now, interestingly, from an engineering point of view, that's a really complicated thing to do, because if I put 100 people into a list, it's easy for me to randomly split them between 50, 25, 25. But if I'm coming in one at a time, it's very, very difficult for me to randomly split to a segment. But the system does that. Obviously, that's what our engineering team do, and that's why they're so clever. And it decides which one, and it's truly random, should be used next. Then what happens is I'm distributing an email, and I'm adding the users that have had that email to a segment. After that, I decided that's enough, and I'm ending the journey there. 25% of my users, though, are going to get an SMS rather than the email, and then I'm adding them to the segment and then ending the journey. And the other 25% are just getting in the journey. So very easy for us to try and now report on the stats for that email, stats for that SMS, and the stats for these marketing segments. So I'm able to see whether any one of them performs better from a data perspective as well as just from a campaign perspective. Now, there's one more component that I want to talk to you about, and that's the subscription process. So subscription module, is actually very clever. So let me do something. I'm going to show you, if any of you work with a soft opt-in status. So I know we've got a lot of recruitment agencies within our books. What we'll do is we'll show you an example of that, how you'd manage the soft opt-in process. So we'd start with a start audience. And let's go with something basic like created on date relative again. So created on date relative is today. Okay, brilliant. Well, what we'll do is we'll then hold you for whatever our soft opt-in subscription status timeout period is, which usually is about 90 days. So when I collect some consumer data, which Force24 doesn't, but other you guys out there, maybe if you can collect a consumer record, you will have a policy that says if you, in the absence of a formal opt-in and or a formal opt-out, during an active sales negotiation, I will use my legitimate interest, right, and soft opt-in status to talk to you. But we will only do so for 90 days. So in which case, we're going to set this delay for 90 days. There we go. And then after 90 days, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn your record off. So I drag in my subscription and I set that to be turning it all off. So after 90 days, you're off. But the thing is, I don't want to do that to everybody, so I just make a decision. And my decision is, and I could make a decision now on a subscription preference status, or I tell you what, email status is active. There we go. And then we'll end the journey right there. Super duper. So now what that's going to do is after the 90 days, it's going to make a check, just make a quick check. Have we got a valid opt-in? If the answer's no, actually it's the other way around. I asked it as a negative. So it's if we do not have the valid opt-in, we'll just check here. If we do, we'll send it to the end journey component there. So that's just a simple data maintenance job that's just checking your data at all times to make sure that you've got the valid opt-in for people. We also see that in instances where businesses have bought data. So usually when a business buys data, they are required by the data provider to maintain that record for 12 months. So I'll buy it on a 12-month license. So in which case I will set the start audience to be the data list rather than just everybody, the data segment in question. I'll give it a delay time of 360 days, 365 days in a year. And after 365 days, by default, unless you've engaged with us, we'll turn you off. And that way, from a data point of view, we're making sure that everything is kept up to date. And we're not going to get into trouble from anybody from a GDPR perspective or from a data provisioning perspective. So journeys are something that we're going to be touching on bit by bit because there is so much to talk about in journeys. But is there anybody that's got anything that's particularly keen that they'd like to ask about journeys? Anybody got anything? Perhaps not. There's not many left. It's a very dry subject today because it is actually quite complicated. But if anybody does have any questions, of course you can ask. You can ask your account manager. But today we were just picking up on the overview of journeys. There is one more thing that I am going to tell you about, and that's this settings tab. Because again, it's something that I find a lot of people aren't necessarily familiar with. So the journey settings are actually a really important part of this. So we have this enrolment settings, and we have the ability to either add contacts to the journey the first time they meet the filter, or add contacts to the journey each time they meet the filter, but only if they've not been in the last 30 days, let's say. So let's run this through. So if I'm running a campaign to somebody, I can't read. I'll come.
Sir Jenny runs all the time until end Jenny. She's just put ignore.
Yeah, it does run until the end journey. But look, what I want to do is the enrolment settings. So if I add contacts to the journey only for the first time they meet the requirements, that means that I will only go through the journey once. So I've got 100 people that I want to run on a journey, and the system's checking every 5 seconds to see if somebody meets a condition. So obviously, every time it meets that condition, my name, I'm still going to be in that list. So in theory, I could run through this journey every 5 seconds. But because I've used this add contacts to journey only the first time they meet the start audience filter, this will only let me go through this journey once. Oh, I can see there's another question coming from Lewis. Just give me a moment. I'll get straight onto that. But if I'm doing something like it's a brochure download journey, and I actually want you to download the brochure whenever you want to download the brochure, I would say, yeah, you can download the brochure, but you can only do it once every hour. And the reason we would do that is because actually sometimes when a user is downloading something, and if that was the trigger point, somebody downloading something, I might hit the submit button on the website 5 times. And it actually, what it does is it fires back that tracking action 5 times. And in theory, it would send the user on the journey 5 times. But by retarding it slightly to be an hour's delay, what happens is it will only allow that action once during any 1 hour, which is a little bit more sensible. But you can use decimals on that, and you can say every half an hour or whatever. So again, if you're not sure about this, do ask your account manager, because it's quite often a good idea just to say, look, I want somebody to run through this, but is this the best way to do it? Because there are other ways where you can preclude people through decisions as well. Right, okay, so what's this question? I've got this TV, I can't read it, I'm just going to stand up. So a journey is created which is live. Can you see the amount of contacts going through the journey? Can you edit an email and journey for the Right, good question. Well done. Excellent question. Yes, so what was the first part of the question? Can you see? Yes. Let's look at the journey reporting. So I've got a journey running. Can I see who's running through it? I absolutely can. So where I've got users running through a journey, I've got this drop down here, and I can see in any particular stage, I can follow that journey. So I can say, right, set delay time, bring into view. That's that one there. Okay. So then after that delay, it's going to send out an email, bring into view. That's that email there. Okay, brilliant. And now skip count 6,000, queued count 6, active count 6, completed count, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so what do they all mean? So skipped count means 6,000 people that were enrolled into the journey weren't eligible to receive an email because they may have unsubscribed. So 6,000 people bounce forward onto the next stage. Queued count is we've got 6 currently waiting to go out the door. So in the next couple of seconds, those will go out the door. Completed count within the time frame specified is 101,485 people that have been through that stage. The total is the total number of people all time that have been through that stage, including the active, including the skipped, including everything. So that's everybody that's been through that stage, whether they actually sent the email or not. So yes, I can see it. Now, if I want to see these people, I simply click on them, click View Contacts, and it'll tell me the 6 people that are just about to go through this. And that's probably why they're not going through this one, because they've got incomplete. So they'll probably be stuck. Sometimes if you do find that, if they are just sat there for a very long time queued, then the system will pick it up every 12 hours. And it will just clear those out. But if you do find it and you think, oh, that's weird, then you can flag it and they can just manually flush the queue if they want. So, next point. Now, I've got a live active journey. What can I change on it? Well, actually, you're very right to ask that question, because what I can't do is fundamentally change the layout of a journey. So I can't, whilst the journey is running, this one isn't, but there'll be a green bar at the top. It says it's live. I can change an email template. In fact, let me do this. I'll go to a live one. Started. Okay, edit. So you see this journey is live. The components on the right are disabled, so I can't add any more components. The fundamental flow of the journey is fixed. I can't change it. However, what I can do is I can say, all right, rather I want to update that email, I want to put that email in. Or do you know what? I want to change the subject line to this, to that. So all of this is editable during the process. The delays are editable during the process. The decisions are editable during the process. Every aspect of it is editable. And I can move things around if I want, but I just can't break the fundamental flow. You see, I can't break that arrow off, or I can't change anything. I'd have to stop it, and then and then make any changes, and then turn it back on. So the reason for that is because obviously there may be 100 people sat in that delay time there. So if I delete that whilst it's turned on, what happens with the people? Well, I'll tell you what happens. They roll back to the previous stage and they go forward from there. So if I deleted that, if I stop this journey, there'd be 100 people in the journey. I delete that component. The 100 people would move there and then immediately to there. So they wouldn't get the email again, but they would move immediately onto the next stage. So when we're editing a journey that has been running, that has got people in the stages, we have to understand what's going to happen to them. So if it's a delay, it will push people backwards and then immediately forward. So it won't send an email, but it will push them to the next stage, so it knows where to go. So I hope that answers your question there, Lewis. That's quite a good point to have brought up. Like I say, we're gonna bring up journeys interspersed with lots of different things. I'm not giving the productivity webinar, not next week, the week after. So it's my colleague Lee who's going to be giving the productivity webinar. And as it stands at the moment, what we're going to be talking about is email templates, segmenting data, which will touch on journeys a little bit more, and microsites. So if there's anybody that's got anything that they'd like to add on to that, then we can include that for the next one as well. But generally, we're just going to be talking about some practical uses of segmenting data, engaged and unengaged contacts, etc. And then microsites, how to upload a PDF, how to manage downloads, etc. So quite a good one, I think, for next week. So this time, we promise we'll get the video up online, and you'll be able to watch it or skip through it for the next one. But yeah, good luck. Anybody got any questions? Just fire them into your account manager, and we'll speak soon. Okay, thanks a lot, guys. All the best. Bye bye.